Joining us right now is Democratic Congressman Mike Quigley of Illinois. He is the co-chair of the Congressional Ukraine Caucus. Congressman, thanks for coming in. When Vladimir Putin says that he thinks that President Trump is making quite energetic and sincere efforts to stop the hostilities and reach agreement that is in the interest of all parties, how do you read that?
Well, first, the fact that Zelensky's not there gives me a great concern. Obviously, they have the most at stake here. And obviously, you can't trust a bloody tyrant. If the president, our president, has shown any extraordinary naïveté, it's that he wrote, I thought he meant what he said, and I don't think he wants to end this war. And by the way, I've heard these stern warnings before. We're now blowing past the sixth deadline that President Trump imposed on Putin, while Putin has escalated the war and has continued to ask for, maximalist conditions for the ceasefire to take place or the war to end.
Of course, if a good outcome from this meeting would be a ceasefire. I've also heard, though, that the administration and the United States should not be afraid of a failed summit, because that could actually set in the longer term the real conditions for peace. If Donald Trump doesn't think what he's hearing is good for Ukraine or good for the United States, that he leaves and says no deal. Do you see that?
Look, I'm forever the optimist, but the fact that the U.S., the Trump administration, has gone in there giving concessions before we even begin negotiations. His NATO ambassador said on territorial issues that they're not going to just give large chunks of land that haven't been, quote, earned on the battlefield. The functional equivalent of that is if FDR had met Hitler and said, we're not going to give you land that you haven't earned, after he had taken most of Europe. I mean, this is the same sort of bloody tyrant we're talking about. Putin understands strength. So if Trump wants to end this, he'll say, we're going to work with our NATO allies. We're going to do another supplemental. We're going to take the money that we hold, the U.S. and the United States, $9 billion in Russian money, and Europe will take the $300 billion to aid in that fight and to push back. That's what Putin gets. He gets strength.
When the president is talking about severe consequences, I hear that what you're laying out right there is what you think are the severe consequences that are left that could be effective. But do you get any sense of what the severe consequences are that the White House would be open to at this point?
Maybe the sanctions package. It's a bilateral package that unfortunately the Senate didn't act on before they left for the August break. I think that's probably as far as this administration would go. The fact that they won't do another supplemental, they have to sell arms to NATO that then go forward. Remember, this is a president who has never said which side he wants to win. So it's hard to be optimistic with a president that's the most that he's done really so far is post stern warnings to Putin on Truth Social. That's never going to work with Putin. We have to start talking about real demands and working with our NATO allies to push Putin, who's now using about 40% of his economy toward this effort. He will treat his people like cannon fodder, but he can't go forever if the U.S. is united again with NATO.
President Trump conceded yesterday that he is powerless to control Vladimir Putin when it comes to killing civilians in Ukraine. Let me play how President Trump put it.
I'll tell you what, I've had that conversation with him. I've had a lot of good conversations with him. Then I go home and I see that a rocket hit a nursing home or a rocket hit an apartment building and people are laying dead in the street. So I guess the answer to that is no, because I've had this conversation.
Is he acknowledging the reality of dealing with Putin, or do you see that as managing expectations for what will come out of their meeting tomorrow?
I think it's further evidence that Trump is afraid to really confront Putin. Putin's not going to go along with things that are just warnings or talk. I think he sees Trump as weak, frankly, and he knows he can continue to do this. There's certainly an arsenal at the president's availability. Again, he can increase these sanctions. He can provide a supplemental. He can tell Putin that he's going to be held accountable for these war crimes. This is what an active president should do. You know, we learned what appeasement does in 1939, and appeasement's not going to work now. He should work with not just those allies, but the sanctions he's talked about. And the only one I know that he's enforced is with India, for those who are still buying goods from Russia, funding this war machine.
Congressman Mike Quigley, thank you so much for coming in.